Yeah, giving that kind of money that quick like
Yeah, if you
that.
don't mind, sitting there with Jerry. Yeah, no, I've got the one for today.
Probably. Probably, or hold it.
Yeah.
Then the kids will get it, and that does it away.
Not good.
I'm really trying to
But I gotta play
figure out
scratch-offs in
who's
order to
who
win
and
them.
How and what, and
I think I rolled $500. I had a kid in my office, my shop. He's good for $300-400.
Really?
Last
but I mean,
month
we
he did
still,
$400-500.
I mean, at the
Really?
corner of
He needs it.
the victim,
I think the most I've ever won on anything like that is $100.
or I think
Ever.
they might.
Ever is right, ever means I'll take it.
Yeah.
Ever.
But
Where's everybody?
So, maybe you have to ask the guy that's seemingly in charge.
Yeah, I'm reading through it and
Seemingly.
thinking, like, trying to keep up with.
And nobody out in the field here. That's not good.
Yeah, he'll explain.
man, I was hoping to meet this group.
Huh?
I was hoping to
No,
meet these
that,
people.
Not
Definitely
even the
lightens
vice chair is not even here.
below.
Oh my God.
Everything else good?
I'm gonna have to backtrack people if you don't get it straightened up. I can't be taking my time to come in here and just park outside and walk inside. I mean, I'll send you the bill.
How, I
Okay.
mean, I don't know if you wanna discuss what is, but how.
Send it right to that man right there.
Just email it to him.
Second floor. Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be more than happy to pay it.
You can stick with the temp, the lady. The Sammy's gone. Oh, she's moved. Oh, okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the vice chairman's not here, we have no audience. I mean, you're taking up my morning, it's
I know.
8:59. I mean,
It's,
what do you?
We gotta have a
what
quorum,
what is-
right?
What is your mission statement here, sir? Can you help us a little bit?
it's, bring me a quorum. That's my mission statement at this point.
That is
What do we have to have, what, 2 more?
Yeah,
You have a quorum,
I
4
thought
out
it
of
was-
7.
Yeah, that's right, we got 4 Harry.
Yeah.
That was
Harry,
5.
do we need to come up to this, up here if you want?
All right.
Sit with the big boys.
So it is 4 out, okay.
Yeah,
I'm good.
come on to the big table.
I feel important now.
don't let it go to your head, my desk is still bigger.
It's weird if no one's here. I figured we were gonna be here almost all day.
That's what we were just talking about,
I know it took me 2 hours to read
I
the
just
200 pages.
Yeah.
reading 300-something pages of information, but.
I started crying, so I put it away.
It's a very interesting read.
I think it's good making of a new John Grisham novel.
Yeah.
I'd say let's get going then, right? Since we have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Can we go ahead with roll call?
TJ Thornberry,
Here.
Wendy Mueller, Juliet Morolla, Jeffrey Masters,
Here.
Perry Hoff,
Here.
Lawrence Godfredson,
Here,
Ara Abrahamian.
All right, we don't have a next scheduled meeting necessarily, kind of an as needed, or we'll see what happens with this case.
Yeah, we have, the next scheduled meeting will be September 28th, 9 AM. Randall Cole, Chief Building Official.
Okay. Citizens' comments. Crickets, crickets. Hearing none. I'll move for an approval of the minutes from the April 27th, 2021 meeting.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, discussions? Hearing none, minutes pass. I have no reports other than I did submit, and I was going to ask you, Mr. Cole, about the request from the board last meeting about writing something up for a PR. I think I emailed it to you. You were going to send it to, I think, the police department to have them review it.
Yes, and I haven't gotten it back.
Okay.
But I will follow up on it. To be honest with
And
you,
again,
it
I'm
just-
open to feedback on that.
Slid to the wayside on me.
Yeah, it's not time sensitive, but it
I
was
will.
something that the board asked me to do, and so I did it. So, and again, it's just a draft. If you guys see something about
Yeah, I
it that
think
you want changed or
you want
added,
maybe
or,
a legal look at it, and we're gonna have the police chief look at it, so.
because when I look back in the minutes, it might have been more of a request for a advertising PR type thing. I did it more informal or informational, on unlicensed
And I
activity
think it
and
went
things
to
like that.
our communications manager as
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah.
I will follow up on that, TJ.
That is all I had, and, any other reports?
No,
Hearing none, okay. And then, under new business, I understand we are tabling the agenda for the two items that are on there.
yes, one of the individuals obtained legal counsel late Friday, and I received an email from Mr. Massey requesting it be continued to the next, or table to the next meeting, see if he would have time to review the package. And then yesterday, I got another email from another attorney regarding the other person with the same request. The chairman has copies of those emails. I went ahead and emailed them back and granted those requests based on the time constraints.
So that's the only thing we had on the agenda today, is not, right?
We do have a very
The
important
budget,
report,
budget review.
Director. So if we're good to go ahead, Kristen Simone. will
So
do-
I'll include this email along with my signed minutes for this meeting.
That'd be great.
And then, at this time, we'll move on to the budget report.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kristen Simeon from Finance. I don't get to see you all very often, but once a year, but glad to be here.
Man, I've been just doing this for 9 years, I'm still waiting on my check, is it coming soon?
Yeah, it's in your,
Okay,
it's
good.
in your bank account every payroll.
Wait for Mr. Thornberry to approve it, thank you.
You're welcome. Oops, oh, sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. That was. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so today we're gonna, talk about the fiscal year 2022 budget. This is pretty much the same presentation that was presented to council. We did have some slight updates, for health insurance rates came in at a little bit less than we had originally projected. So we had been using 7% and it went down to 4.4%. As well as when we did our calculation for the administration charges that are, divvied up between all the funds. Building had a slight decrease there as well, and then beginning carryover had a slight adjustment, and that's just from the prior year coming into fiscal year 2022 for an adjustment we made there. So as you can see in fiscal year 22 to 26,
Hi, I just wanted to say, Jeffrey Masters, your microphone, can you put it down a little more? I couldn't hear you. Thank you.
Always in trouble.
You're always in the doghouse.
Sir, don't worry about it.
so for revenues, you can see what the revenues are coming in at. For fiscal year 2022, permit revenue is budgeted at $1,250,000 with 2% increases. And a lot of the other ones are pretty much flat or have slight increases. Interest income was the one that has a decrease because obviously interest rates have been a lot lower than they have been in the past. Operating expenditures are per the department, and we'll go over what they requested in fiscal year 2022. And for fiscal year 23, we've put in there an estimated additional staff person for a building inspector based on the increases that we're seeing in permitting, especially in larger facilities. The capital outlay in fiscal year 2023 is one replacement and then one new vehicle for the estimated additional staff member. So you can see there the beginning and ending reserves for each year. And the ending reserves for fiscal year 2022 is almost 1.5 million, but by fiscal year 2026, we estimate approximately 730,000. So they're a little high currently in fiscal year 2022, but I'm gonna show you at the end, our graph from our last economic downturn, just so you can see how sometimes that gets used up very quickly, and yet we still have to support the services of the city. So again, for fiscal year 2022, we're balanced, there's no change in fees, and that's through all the years. We have not changed any fees in all the years of the pro forma. For fiscal year 2022, there is one added position, but it is a split position, so only half the position will be paid by building fund. They currently already have one position like this, and they're just requesting a second position in the same way. This gives them extra coverage for, if that other one person is out. They've also been seeing that there have been a lot of additional needs of the building division to use that staff member. So again, this is just gonna help out both divisions. The position is not scheduled to start though till mid-year of April, so April 1st of 2022, because that is how, for the general fund, all those general fund positions are starting April 1st. So because this is a shared position, it would also start at the same time. And we talked about the fiscal year 2023 added position. Again, it's an estimated add, but it is in the pro forma to project for those permitting.
May I ask a
Yes.
question? On that last piece, you said a half of a position,
Yes,
is that for an inspector?
as line and grades, they do. So the engineering tech will do some work that's on the public works side, but then some work that's on the building side, and that, the part that's on the building side is the line and grades.
Okay, thank you.
So building pays half and engineering pays the other half?
Yes,
This,
and this is a second position like this. We did that the last time.
and all of this financial is based on strictly building department as an enterprise fund, correct? No
Correct.
general revenue.
Correct. The only thing that's shared is, well, the administration charge is like the fees for, say, all the personnel, finance, because we don't charge that separately to the fund. So it's allocated based on each fund's expenditures.
Okay, and I just out of curiosity, 19 was in the red, or in the black, why budget a negative budget for all the pro formas?
So
And I'm assuming that comes out of the reserves, that difference.
yes, it does, and but there are available reserves, so they're being budgeted for use. And again, the reason why I think you see in 19 that it was, let me get my pro forma, it's over here.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why, I mean, and some of the negatives are
Yep.
six figures, some of them are less. I realize that's personnel related, but I'm just curious
Yeah,
as
so
to why
part
not
of
an
it is
even
like,
budget.
so, yeah, most of it's personnel related. And also what happens is sometimes revenues come in a little better than we expected. So in 19, they came in a little better. In 2020, they came in a little less. But that was, the COVID related stuff going on. So we're not too concerned about that at this time, again, because there are such high reserves and we know we need to spend them down anyway. So it is planned use of reserves.
And my next question is, and that's perfect, you said high reserves. I consider this, basically, this is like a one-year reserve. If everything were to stop today, the department would operate for about a year.
Yep. So
Seems
according
light
to
to
the
me.
Florida statutes, they consider this high reserves for the
I
fund.
know on the other counterparts that I'm on, they're up to 2 to 3 years in reserves, and they're able to do that by statute.
Yes, as long as the building board approves it, yes.
Yeah.
So that is why Florida before there was a change in the law, I think like 2 years ago, and we didn't used to have to bring the budget to the building board, and we could keep the reserves at a little higher level. However, the new statute requires building board approval if the reserves are over the 1-year permit revenues, and they're currently over our first year.
I mean, my personal opinion
Revenues.
is that we should have 2 years of reserves, because if we do have a downturn, and as hard as it is to get people, you don't want to have to let everybody go that second year just to survive, and then now you're trying to hire again. The '07 recession, and that was a completely different animal, but I feel like 2 years of reserves to operate the building department at current level is more of a healthy budget, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I also it just kind of goes against my grain to budget in the negative period.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
And we normally don't like to do that, but again, we were trying to get, and again, not have to raise fees as well. There's a lot of volatility in the building department, as you know. We don't know when projects are coming on, so we do our best guess to estimate. And so in this, we started with the 1.2,500,000 based on the way it is, what we're seeing right now. It could be more next year, right? So we try to balance all of that, and then a lot of times you see a better picture, like in 19, because I could almost guarantee you our 19 budget probably had a negative balance to start with, but then revenues came in better, and some expenditures might not have gotten, our departments do a really good job about trying to keep expenses to the minimum, and not spend every dollar just because it's budgeted and things like
Right.
that, so.
So, quick question. So 2021 to 2026, you have about a third more revenue. And that's saying everything's staying constant with fees. So you're saying there's gonna be about a third more building by 2026 than there is today, but yet you're still taking a loss.
Yes, because expenses, on the expense side, right, we have generally, say for personnel, there's 4% merit increases, there's, we estimate 3% increases in other operating expenditures, 5% in insurance is the estimated increase. So those things increasing, plus the additional 1.5 staff members also adds to that.
So if you don't have that 1/3 increase in building construction by 2026, that number could be triple that, quadruple that from today.
You
So
mean on the revenue side or on the
On the
expense?
revenue side, if everything's staying constant, like
Yep.
fees and everything, so a building needs to increase by 1/3 in order to meet that number.
Yes, so as we,
That's a big undertaking from what we're doing today.
If I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Permitting fees are based on value. You gotta remember that, Barry, not volume.
Okay, so.
The vast majority of it's on
And as
value.
things go up, I see that. So I'm with TJ. I don't know if there's a way for us to, she said building board could approve to be able to take it. Is there a way for us to do that?
I mean, it might be, and I guess the curiosity then would be, how would we then increase reserves?
Who governs that?
so if we were to increase reserves, we would have to propose a rate increase to the building fees.
Not a rate increase. Who governs the reserves? The amount of reserves you keep?
Well, first of all, the city, the finance department, like so myself, we keep it all separate for the building fund. And then the state has requirements, and as I mentioned, what their requirements are.
So the state is the requirement of 1 year?
Yes, they tell us that our reserve shouldn't be higher than the 1 year of permit revenue.
So basically, that's kind of a minimum, though.
I don't agree.
Well,
with
they
Well-
say it shouldn't be higher, but
They consider, so, let me first, I should preface off, like, so the normal reserves, I know you think it should be higher, again, for the recession, and that's why we're okay with these being higher. But the national standard for reserves in any type of fund is 2 months operating. So that's 16.67%, and you're over 100%. So that's why we say these are higher, And we understand they're higher, and we want to keep, we're okay in finance with the building fund being a little higher because of what we did see during the 07, 08 timeframe. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a little bit.
is that standard based on government
Yes,
entities?
national, it's the Governmental Officers Finance Association. Yep, it's a national standard.
Yeah, and that, again, I'm not, if we want to make a recommendation, I'm not necessarily at this time without delving more into it in favor of raising fees right now, but it's just concerning to me that, and again, I realize this is all just a crystal ball at this point, up to
Exactly.
26, but to have that level of reserves, if there was something that came about, I would just hate for us to see the building department having to cut back to the point where they're back down to a skeleton, and then things get back going again, you have all these employees that have to retrain and that kind of thing, but That standard is surprising, because that's the first I've seen that on other things that I'm involved in. Like I said, I think on the other, I'm not gonna say which one, but the other one that I'm involved in, it's 2 to 3 years
Yep.
of continuity of operating, so, 2 months sounds awful, really, really skinny to me.
And
but-
like I said,
And 1 year, I would think would be a minimum, and that seems to be where we are, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Like with our general fund, we're just trying to get back up to
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, we're not even there yet for 2 months of operating. But like I said, for the building fund, they have been increasing their reserve. You'll see how it helped during the recession, because it did help keep people on, or even the skeletal crew, as you want to call it. Again, there really wasn't work for them as well, so they went down to a total of 5 with furloughs at some point, because it took a while to turn that curve back into the building, and having the increases, and then we've been increasing since then.
Obviously, I mean, there could be more residential that's happening now, which is hard to even fathom, but hopefully the commercial side is what, you know, between apartments, condos, commercial is gonna be our next 5-year, hopefully, push.
Yes.
So, anyway,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
May I ask an open-ended question?
Sure.
If you bleed the reserves, where do you go from there?
Well, again, we're not trying to bleed the reserves, and we look
No,
at
no,
this.
no, just an open-ended question. If you spend all your reserves, if you don't have that money to cover yourself, what happens then? Where do you go for money, for revenue? If the phones die, and they don't quit, and they don't buy any permits, what happens?
Well, again, that's what the reserves are there for. We do as much as we can to keep it in. And then in the worst case scenario, which I have never seen happen, because again, we look at this every year, we look at it throughout the year, and try and constantly update our pro formas for what we're currently seeing. Again, economic conditions, again, things are based on values, so building fund permit revenue is a harder one to budget, just because we don't know what's in the pipeline, or what someone's gonna, a development that comes in that we didn't know about, you know, that just all of a sudden comes in. So we do our best. We don't have that crystal ball. But if for some reason you got to a point where you were using up all your reserves, we would probably do interfund loan to keep the fund going, and then the building fund would have to pay it back. But again, I don't think we would do that without raising building fees.
I mean, really, to answer your question,
Cover that.
Jeff, is if the building industry stops tomorrow, and there's not, you know, one more permit being paid for, in 2022, we've got basically 1 year of reserves to operate the department. And then at that point, the department basically gets dissolved to whatever degree, down to like a skeleton crew, or, you know.
You guys all come from the perspective that the only business we're in is building permits, and we're not. We're part of public safety. So we have some responsibility to existing structures and anything else that's coming along that has to do with public safety, the parks, infrastructure in the city to a certain degree. So our floodplain management, for example, our ADA enforcement is another example. We work with fire prevention on new and existing for fire
And how is that funded?
inspections. Right now, it's all funded by the enterprise fund, because it's all part of the Florida Building Code in separate sections. But you're not gonna get a total disbandment of a building division because of its public work service.
So the general revenue or general fund would end up picking
Right,
up.
some building departments, divisions in the state do receive ad valorem money, like Charlotte County does. At this point, we haven't had to. We haven't need to, we've been self-sufficient. And one more point, if I could, Christian. These projections for revenue, when Christian and I talked, they're very, very conservative, because that's just the way we are. We're very conservative. And that's why, if you remember when Christian was here last year, we were showing using reserves to this year, and it didn't happen. They grew. So she'll be back next year, I'm sure.
So what percentages comes from permits, and what percentage comes from that other part of it?
So out of the 1 million, so out of the 1,378,000, 1,250,000 is the let me get the math for you.
So about 100,000,
Yeah, I mean,
150,000?
it's very up there, because the permits are the biggest portion of the fund.
Is that not the only income?
No, they have some other fees for like when they do
Re-inspect?
But it's not state
inspections,
funded,
and they
right?
also do the certificate of occupancies, right?
Certificate of
Competencies,
License-
yep.
Contractor licensing. We do the line and grade permits, we do canal permits, and we do some fire prevention. So-
Have you guys factored in private inspection, taking a hit off of your guys' inspectors?
No, they
fees?
have not. We have not experienced that.
Yet.
Due to the fact that everyone that has come here to talk about, it, when they find out we do same-day inspections, they're not willing to spend the money on a third party.
Some big projects come here, though, they're going private inspect for sure.
Now, we have some big projects that aren't showing up here. We've got the 300 apartment complex, 300 luxury apartment complexes. The permit's ready to go out the door. It's sitting upstairs. And they're already, that's phase one, and they're working on phase two out in the Jones Loop area. So that's in the pipeline. Next, this Thursday's the groundbreaking for the assisted living at Acroesta and Socorro. That's a 127-bed facility. So that's taken off. Now, on projects like that, we have a lot of what they call threshold inspections, where we don't do all the inspections. The design professionals for the building, they do a lot by state required law. They do a lot of threshold inspections that they submit to us, that becomes part of our inspection process. So we don't have the whole burden. So,
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Do you need a recommendation by this board to
Yeah,
approve this budget?
Let me just go through the rest.
Okay.
So the other thing that increased in 2022 is that there's contractual services for 36,000 for digitizing archived commercial plans. Again, a lot of the old ones are becoming very faded and deteriorated, and yet they're required to keep them. And then 23 to 26, the fund budgeted 10,000 per year to keep up with digitizing those plans. We talked about all this. Again, our operating reserves are being maintained for future stabilization. And again, we will need a recommendation to maintain those excess operating reserves. And we'll get, I just show you one more thing. And here's a graph showing our revenue, ending reserves, and number of positions that we had. So this is the reason we are comfortable with keeping excess reserves at this level. So you can see in '06, revenues were very high, your ending reserves were still a little bit high, and your positions were high. And then as we went through the recession, you can see how the revenues went down. And again, we were using reserves to pay that off, and how low our reserves got during that time. And again, we went down, I think, from like 12 or 13 positions down to 5 positions, and even those 5 positions had to take furloughs during, I think they did 1 per pay period during that time. So again, we're conservative. You can see things are going back up. They might go back up even further, in that 5-year projection outlook that we currently have. So now I will take your recommendation to approve the budget, as well as approving maintaining those excess reserves, if you're so inclined.
So as chairman, I'll ask or entertain a motion to accept the budget as proposed, including the reserves. So I'm not going to make the motion, but that's my suggestion. Unless somebody has any questions, concerns, or changes?
I think an annual 1-year reserve is tight, but I don't recall. I mean, I guess we're all looking at it from the private sector tight, 1 year, that's pretty tight. But, it is what it is.
Well, I think that they've been doing this for a long time. And according to this graph that's in front of us, it seems to be pretty successful, even through 2008. I think we should just trust them. And it does get reviewed every year. It's not like we're committing ourselves for 5 years.
Maybe maybe we can work on a salary increase for ourselves in this budget, maybe.
I think we should vote a
for
50%
reserves.
salary
Yes,
increase.
sir.
That would be
And we
good.
could back charge 9 or 10 years and try to get that.
And I agree with what you're saying, like I mentioned before, in my business, if I have no other source of income, if I'm not building houses, so for me, a year of survival is crucial, so, but I realize in this case, there's other olive branches, so to speak, so, it's totally up to you guys.
Yeah, go back.
My
to
goal
what-
as chairman is not to vote or make a motion unless there's a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
What was the motion you said?
I would suggest as
We're
proposed.
requesting a motion to either accept the budget as well as the excess reserves that are in the budget.
So I move to accept the budget as well as the excess reserves.
And let me note that that's Perry Hoff making the motion.
Oh, Perry Hoff, yeah.
I'll second that.
Good.
I'm sorry,
Second that, Lance Gottfredson.
okay, because I know she wants to get the recording of the name, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
So with that, is there any other unfinished business, staff comments, board member comments?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Let's-
Oh,
He's first on the agenda, so let's go with staff comments
I thought
first.
we were past that, okay.
I kind of hyper extended the agenda a little bit.
No, staff doesn't have anything else. Thank you very much. And keep in mind, too, when you think of private sector versus us, we have a monopoly.
That's true.
But we're not the-
No, did you say
Competition.
attitude or monopoly? Attitude, or is this, what in the saying, attitude and monopoly, is that pretty much?
No, it's just, we don't have any competition in town.
It's
We're the only game.
I know, but 09, 010, anybody in the room remembers those
And
days.
yes, and one thing we did do, and it was the city manager's standard procedure, is when we train personnel in any division in the city, we try to retain them by moving them to other positions that may open up because of attrition. For example, Steve Parker, our plumbing and building inspector, he went out to utilities and did inspection work on the dam for Shell Creek for 4 years. So we kept him in the system and then brought him back when we could. Other things with people, we have attrition, maybe someone's ready to retire, maybe they were gonna wait another 6 months, and they say, you know what, I'm gonna go and save a job. We all got together and decided to take a furlough day rather than lay anyone else off, so that kept another job. So it's a big organization, the city, almost 300 employees. We can find places for people most times. County did the same thing.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's a good balance that I'd like to see is, we have our private sector hats on all the time, and we have to let government do their thing sometimes, so, but it's important to ask the questions too, of course, so.
I've got a general question about these things two items that just got postponed. What authority do we have as a board, and what are we trying to accomplish if these all parties came before us and argued today? I mean, it seems like it should have gone to court first.
Right, that's a great question, because I do like to constantly remind of what our powers and duties are, which is on number 5 here, which is to hear complaints regarding locally licensed and registered contractors. And then we have basically 7 options. And it's very important, in my mind, that we focus on that and not get in the weeds on private sector litigation. We can't. And so basically, we can order probation, we can suspend the guilty party's local license, we can revoke the guilty party's local license, we can order restitution, we can levy a fine up to $5,000 per offense, we can assess reasonable legal and investigation costs incurred by the city of Punta Gorda to prosecute the case against the contractor, and we can issue a recommended penalty to the State of Florida Construction Industry Licensing Board. Said recommended penalty may include a recommendation for no further action, a recommendation for suspension, revocation, or restriction of the contractor's state registration or fine to be levied by the State of Florida Construction Industry Licensing Board, or a combination of such penalties.
which I
That's
understand.
that's all we can do.
Well, I understand that, but whatever we do, it would seem premature because they're still fighting on who did what to whom.
But we have the authority, actually, we report at
If
the
I
pleasure
could.
of the county, of the city council.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could. These two complaints that were scheduled for today that will be on next month's agenda. There is no charging documents in the packages you received because as the building official and staff has made no charges of misconduct. We're asking the board to act as an investigative body, which is under your purview, and hear the parties and decide whether was or is a violation of the building code or state licensing laws. At that point, if the board does find that there is, it will be continued to the next meeting after that, and I would then, per your order, prepare a charging document when we would hear the case. So this is just an investigative portion, to see whether it is maybe something just contractual, or if you feel there was a violation of licensing.
So
So
if
we are gonna be sort of judge and jury.
We are
in-
quasi judicial, yes, we have, under this, on these 7 items here, one of which is to investigate, assess reasonable legal and investigation costs incurred by the city. So we are quasi judicial, that's why we're governed
But
under
if it goes
sunshine
to
laws.
court and we
We don't-
decide
we-
one way and court decides the opposite,
That's
is what we've done.
Our
become null
jurisdiction
and
is
void.
with the contractor, not with the civil authorities, not with the civil cases that are going
Strictly
back.
just his
We're
licensing.
worried about the contractor.
The appeal process for this board is with the circuit court.
Say
Can
that
reverse
again?
any decision, the circuit court can reverse any decision this board reaches.
Okay.
Correct.
The appellate process for your board.
So are we able to look at the project then if we're gonna be the investigating people for these people, or at least get color photos? And better pictures of what's going on? If we have to make a decision, if there was any wrongdoing, I need to be able to know what I'm looking at.
And I don't want to go into those cases today because the parties aren't here and the board's attorney's not here.
Okay.
I didn't have David come in because
I would like to.
I knew these weren't gonna be heard, so we didn't bring the board attorney in, but your attorney will be here.
And there has been times where we have made a field visit, either the chairman or since I've been on here, we haven't as an entire board.
Yep.
Yes.
But we certainly have that right and ability.
And your
to do
attorney
that.
will advise you on the procedures and process for that,
So that'll all be happening on the next meeting, then we'll decide what we're gonna do then.
unless the parties come to some resolution, of course.
Right, okay.
So the only gray area that's always been in my mind is on the state-certified contractor's license, which the city of Punta Gorda does not issue licenses. So you have to be registered in the county or registered somewhere else with a state or a license, a registered license or a state license, and then register in the city of Punta Gorda. So our jurisdiction is strictly over that registration in the city of Punta Gorda. And we send our recommendation up to DBPR, but we can restrict their ability to work here as a state license holder, but we can't, there's nothing we can do against a state license holder ultimately for their state
Not a
license.
certified, a registered license or specially licensed, you do have other powers in here as far as monetary fines or restitution. State certified, you only have the ability to remove the permitting privileges for the city, and then we would refer it to DBPR, and they would open up a probable cause hearing.
But you could also find them here, right?
State
Not state
license?
certified,
No.
So that's only registered licenses we can find?
certified and specialty, yes.
Okay.
So under state licenses, which is probably the majority now, because I don't even think
They've grandfathered a lot of them, in, so yes.
Yeah, and there's legislation that's pending that might even do away with local licensing.
We'll still have private specialty licensing because the state doesn't have all the categories. You know, they have the
Right.
major ones.
But for the most part, the state certifieds, all we have the
So-
ability is to revoke their license to do business in the city of Punta Gorda.
The max penalty that we can do then is revoke their city license and then recommend to DBPR that this is what our recommendations for what happened is.
Yes, we not only send it to DBPR, we also send it to Charlotte County. and if need be, depending on what jurisdiction they're working out of, Lee County. Because there's also in the statutes, if a contractor is disciplined by any other municipality in the state within a 12-month period, and then is disciplined by another one, it's another infraction at the state level with DVPR. So that's why we do communicate between the different municipalities, and DVPR gets copied on all of it.
And I do like to remind that we are governed under sunshine, and the one that kind of gets us, because we forget, is hitting reply all on the emails even, is not recommended by the attorney. We need to just reply individually, because otherwise we would need to be in a meeting setting to have any discussion amongst us on any matter related to this board.
So when an
Correct.
attorney shows up, and they do several times, they'll bring their attorneys because justifiably you want them to speak for them because maybe they're not relevant enough to speak. But he has no authority whatsoever, nothing. He's just another one of us, if any at all. But sometimes, you know, that attitude comes in.
But when that, the hearing portion of the meeting opens up, it's very important that we follow the guidance of our attorney because of, you know, we want to make sure we're following the legal letter of the law when it comes to even our comments. Sometimes I noticed in the past, we've gotten in the weeds on maybe even making recommendation to the homeowner on what to do in this situation or how to handle it, and really, we shouldn't do that. I mean, we all have an opinion of what they could do or should do. I know there was a roofing issue last year that we were trying to help. But even that can be, it's not our duty. And,
The
and we-
roof issue, a year and a half ago, that was an example of everything.
yeah.
Attorneys, what to say, what not to say, educating the homeowner
So-
on their actual rights.
So, what do we have left? Anything? We've done unfinished business, staff comments, board, citizen comments? Hearing
Nice, that
crickets,
was
hearing
real
none.
nice.
If there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn.
Sir,
Oh, hang on, we're not adjourned yet, then go ahead. They're
I
still on the mic.
don't have a comment, but I can wait till after we're adjourned, I think.
Okay, we're all agreed to adjourn.
Good.
Okay,
So
good.
I must have been doing something really wrong for 3 years because we always open the meeting with the pledge.
I dawned on me as I was reading through the agenda,
Oh,
and I thought
get
it would
that
be even
hammer.
worse to go back.
I
And
agree,
so-
motion approved.
We'll all just do it in our hearts as we're leaving. But I will duly note, make that correction for sure.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, everyone.
absolutely.